See this fly? I hate country living. Okay, so enough trying to kill flies. Hey everyone, it's Lori, and I'm here today with my August reading wrap-up. August was a very busy month for us. We took about a week-long vacation, and so I only ended up reading 5 books in the month of August, and most of them were small books. So I'm going to get started with my 3-star books and then move into my 4-star books. I did not have any 5-star books this month. So the least book-like of the books that I read this month was Spy vs. Spy, Danger, Intrigue, and Stupidity. So if you are my age, you may remember reading Mad magazine as a kid, full of all sorts of really massive stupidity, but this was a cartoon that was in there. There are really almost no words in this book. There is a little intro about the artist. He was born in Cuba and came to the U.S. basically because he was a political cartoonist, and that didn't go over well in Cuba. So that's where Spy vs. Spy came from. This is funny. Obviously didn't take very long because it was all cartoons. So you have the different way the 2 spies get back at each other all the time. So there's lots of explosions and death, but everybody's fine in the next frame. So just a fun memory of childhood. I think I picked this up at the stuff as many books as you can fit in a bag for a certain amount of dollars at the library book sale last year, which is coming up soon, so I may have to go stuff another bag full of books. The next least like a book thing that I read was actually a novella, and I had checked this out on my Kindle through, I think it's Amazon First Reads or Amazon Prime Reads or some sort of checkout thing you can do through Prime. That book was Evidence of the Affair by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So it's a short little novella. I was able to check it out both in Kindle and in audio. I didn't listen to the audio. I read the Kindle version, and I read it on an airplane. It took me less than 2 hours. I enjoy Taylor Jenkins Reid's writing style, but I think generally her worldview and her morality are far enough different from mine that generally speaking, her storylines always bug me a little bit. So, like, I get that the whole thing is about a man and a woman communicating because their spouses are having an affair. I just didn't like how it all tied up with a bow at the end. I didn't appreciate the ending very much. It might have gotten 4 stars if it weren't for that. It's basically written in letter form, which doesn't bother me at all. I kind of really love books written in letter form. But she generally has some sort of ending that I find distasteful due to my personal morals, and this was yet another example of that. So, and then the third book that I gave 3 stars to, it's also a short book. And it's a reread. It's Lies Homeschooling Moms Believe by Todd Wilson. And Todd Wilson, I think his kind of business Facebook-y name is The Family Man, but he draws cartoons, and they're like little homeschool cartoons. So this little one here, the wife says, "I can't take it anymore. I want to put the kids in school now." And the husband says, "Public or private?" And she says, "Boarding." So, you know, just little homeschooly cartoons. Basically, the point behind this book is that as homeschooling moms, we tend to believe certain lies about ourselves and about the moms around us, about how we are doing worse than everyone we see. And it's just basically a gentle reminder that what we see isn't what's there. So, well, we may struggle with housework, but do something pretty well. Maybe somebody else struggles with the exact opposite thing as us and has a perfectly gorgeous house. I don't relate to the perfectly gorgeous house. I'm more the my house is a mess kind of person. So it's kind of telling you not to fall into that comparison trap. It is kind of written from an evangelical Protestant worldview and perspective, and so some of the terminology is a little awkward for me, just because as Catholics we would phrase things differently. It's not bad information. It's just presented in a way that doesn't really resonate with me in the same way that it might somebody who was in an evangelical perspective. So it's got good information, cute cartoons. It was worth the time to read. It was worth the time to reread because I've read this a couple of times, but it's not the most earth-shattering homeschool book I've ever read. And then I also had 2 4-star books. One of them was an audio book, and that was Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman. I've been working on this one since kind of the end of June, beginning of July. I started listening to it at overnights for swim meets, and I did finally finish that up towards the beginning of August. I really enjoyed Neil Gaiman as a narrator. I always enjoy his narration because he has such a great voice for audiobooks. And I enjoyed the stories. I mean, it's mythology, so there's some weirdness and grossness and just iffy stuff in there. So this is not something I'd recommend for very young children, but I have no problem with my kids listening to it because they are familiar with a lot of different myths from a lot of different cultures. So, you know, there's a whole situation with like Loki being tied to an animal by his genitals for the entertainment of a giant. I think it was very strange. So, but you know, Norse mythology, it was fun. I enjoyed the narration. I enjoyed the stories. Was it the most earth-shattering mythology collection I've ever read? No, but it was fun. So, and then the last book I finished in my other 4-star book was not a small book. This is actually one that the girls will be using for British literature this year. And I had not read any Emily Bronte before, but I finished Wuthering Heights. I really knew very little going into this book. Like, I didn't even know who the characters were. So one of the main characters in this is Heathcliff, and he's kind of an anti-hero. So he and pretty much everybody else in this entire novel are just very unlikable to the point of like, I hated everybody in the novel for most of the novel, but it's so well written and so compelling that you just keep going. Once I got towards the end, all of a sudden, like, the person that the story is being told to moves away. I was like, well, what do we have now? But there's kind of a whole, it's not really an epilogue, but it kind of feels like an epilogue where the guy who was being told the story in the first place ends up coming back and we find out what happened since he left. So Wuthering Heights is fascinating. I've never enjoyed a novel so much where I didn't like anybody in the book. But that's kind of the special thing about this book. I really need to go insane with that fly. So I'm going to end here and go get a fly spotter and try to kill that fly. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books or if you're interested in reading them or if you have any questions for me. Please feel free to subscribe. I probably don't say that enough. It's really not hard. There's just a little red button down below. You click on it, and then you kind of get sometimes notified when I post. I don't know. YouTube is weird. But I hope you enjoyed this small August reading wrap-up. My September should be better. The girls are back to school. I'm falling more into a rhythm of reading, so I'm hoping to get through more books and more variety of books during the month of September. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you later.